Welcome to this online seminar on note-taking in academia as part of the Overcoming Obstacles, Barriers and Challenges. I'm Joanna Peksa on behalf of the Learning Enhancement team. We guide students on different aspects of academic communication. Reach out to us on let@mdx.ac.uk if you have any questions. The focus of today's sessions is really to discuss the importance of effective note-taking at university. I know that you probably have preferred styles of note-taking, but today we're going to look at different methods and styles that might enrich your experience as a note-taker, and also we're going to complete an activity together. There is a handout for you available from the materials folder for this session, and let's look into that a little bit later on. Let's start this session with a question. Why do we think effective note-taking is important at university, you might ask? Imagine a scenario when you're taking notes in a lecture, in a seminar, you want to catch everything that your lecturer is saying, you want to write down everything that is on the slides. You don't have any idea on how to organize your notes, how to structure your ideas either. You also want to think about everything that is being said, and you don't really know how the ideas mentioned in that session are connected together. Now, this is where the effective note-taking comes in. So if you're thinking about how to make the most of your note-taking, you'll be looking at avoiding plagiarism, writing things in your own words. You want to think ahead of the session, think about what the session is about. So organize and structure your ideas ahead before the session really starts. You also want to make connections between the ideas mentioned in the session. So that might be different authors, different sources, different references that might be mentioned in that particular lecture, in that particular seminar. Making notes in an effective way makes you a more confident student when it comes to paraphrasing. So when it comes to using your own words to convey the message. And it also helps you to monitor and reflect your learning. So these are the reasons why a note-taking in academia is effective. And I think there are several of them. It's worth thinking of them. And this is what we're going to discuss in more detail in the session. There are different situations when you're going to take notes at university, and there are different reasons for that. So you might want to take notes in your lectures and seminars. You might want to take notes when you read and source information from different sources. You might want to take notes in study situations such as group studies when you complete your assignments or revise for the exam. And these situations will require a different purpose and will require a slightly different preparation. But when it comes to effective note-taking, what would you consider? There are differences between effective and non-effective note-taking, also known as active and passive note-taking. So active note-taking really takes preparation and being selective about what you really want to write down. You're going to look for connections between topics, as opposed to passive note-taking when you're just copying from the slides verbatim. So this is really similar to the hypothetical scenario that I told you about at the very beginning. You're not going to, as an active note-taker, you're not going to underline words mindlessly. So you're going to look at connections between the ideas. You will want to ask questions about the ideas that you are listening to, that you're hearing about, and you also want to be critical about what you're reading or hearing. Active note-taking really takes evaluation of your sources. So being able to be judgmental about what you need for your particular topic, for your particular assignment. And I'm quite aware that taking notes in an active way is an art. And this is an art that you need to practice, you need to learn. Many students experience issues with note-taking. They, for example, take too many notes during a session. They don't know when to stop. They don't know what ideas to select, and also don't know which parts are important in the note-taking. They can't write fast enough, for example, during lectures, or maybe they don't even know what to write down. So there are certain challenges with note-taking, but there are also certain ways to overcome these challenges. So the first way of overcoming these challenges is preparation. You need to identify your purpose, you need to identify the aim of taking notes. And this can be found in a variety of resources that are available either online or from your lecturer. And I'm talking here about the module handbook or maybe the learning outcomes. You might also want to identify the aim for your note-taking in the assignment brief or your marking criteria. So these are the most common places where you can find more information about what you really need for that session, what kind of information, and how you will structure your notes. And in this session, we're discussing two main activities in academia for taking notes. So these are lectures and seminars, and also reading and researching. So when we look at lectures and seminars, you're looking at different stages of taking your notes. The first stage is before the lecture, the second stage is during the lecture, and the third stage is after the lecture. Before the lecture is, again, it's the question of preparing your materials, it's preparing your thoughts for taking notes. So that's linked really to what I said earlier about finding the information in your handbook, My Learning, and other places at UniHub. During the lecture, you want to avoid copying words directly from the slides, for example. The slides are very often available from My UniHub. So this is a chance for you to get ready for a session, for a lecture, for a seminar, and also think about how you're going to structure your notes. What are the information that maybe I'm mentioned on the slides, but the lecturer will probably elaborate on during the lecture. Also look out for the signposting language, so the transition phrases you'll hear, they signal the changes of ideas, the changes of topics. You might want to learn to use abbreviations. So for example, the words that are commonly used, how can you write them quicker, retaining the meaning. And the last stage is after the lecture. So when you finished making notes, reflect, select, and discuss the notes with your friends, within your study groups. There are different ways of doing that. And this is a very important stage that students often overlook. The other situation you'll find yourself in is when you read and research for example, your essay, for other assignments, and that again requires a plan. So there are different ways you can approach that. When you have a large chunk of text, think about what is the gist of that text? What is the core message being conveyed in that particular source? You don't have to write all the information down because it's already written down. So you need to be, again, selective. You need to focus on the main points. And you can do it through skimming. So thinking about looking for the most important points that are usually at the beginning or the end of a paragraph, or at the beginning and end of a section, or there might be at the very beginning and end of the whole paper. So when you think about the introduction and conclusion, these are usually the places where we direct students. You might also want to summarize arguments using your own words. And last of all, use critical reflection, because reading in academia also involves evaluation of the sources that you're reading, connecting them, comparing and contrasting them. In other words, synthesizing sources. When you read academic sources, you also need a full reference of every thought, idea, and concept. And it's worth doing it as you go. So do not forget about including references in your notes as well. And when you read a paragraph, a section, think about how you can approach that in your own words, interpret the information in your own way. So maybe you want to, again, close the book and think about how to convey that information in your own words. And there are many common ways of taking notes. We all take notes in our own way. We all have our preferred system. But in today's session, I want you to think about the ways that work best for you. So I would like you to think about 2 or 3 ways that you take notes in. So take pen and paper and write down 2 or 3 strategies, 2 or 3 techniques that you commonly use for taking notes. And it can be in any situation. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to complete that activity. And then we're going to look at what I've got for you. Okay, so let's have a look at our answers. So I guess the most common ways of taking notes are bulleting your information, writing quotes, copying direct quotes. You can also rely on tables, mind maps, summaries, and paraphrasing. So these are very, very useful ways of taking notes. But what about structuring them? How do you structure them in order to selectively use the information for, let's say, a particular section of your assignment? So if you want to write an introduction, where would you take the information from? Would that be a summary? Would that be a bullet point? Would that be a question? Okay, so let's have a look at the ways of systematizing your notes. And one way you can do it is a Cornell method. And you can see it is a very systematized way, really, where you are dividing the page into different sections. And the section at the very top is for you to include the title of your session together with the date. You also have a left-hand column. This is where you write down any questions, any annotations, so comments about the session or about a source maybe. In the right-hand side column, you write down the notes. So the notes corresponding to the headings, to the comments, or to the questions. And the Cornell method also includes a summary. So the summary of a session, the summary of the source that you are reading. It's worth including that summary to see how well you understand that source. As you can see, this way of taking notes is very structured. It requires quite a bit of preparation. But according to research, and especially the research at Cornell University, the students who use this method are more likely to succeed in academia. Okay, they've got their own system, which is tried and tested. So let's try it together. I've got an activity for you, which includes watching a TED Talk. So let's watch a TED Talk together. I'm going to launch it very soon. You've got a handout here that is also available from your materials section for this session. So this is, let me just go to the handout itself. We've got a Cornell note-taking template here, and it looks exactly the same as the one I showed you on the slide. So here is a chance for you to provide the lecture title, the dates, the headings, and the notes. We'll also have a go at writing a short summary for that TED Talk. And the TED Talk is on speaking more effectively and making people listen to you more. So it is about The Power of Speaking by Julian Treasure. Let's watch it together. After the talk, you'll have a chance to compare the notes with the example answers provided. So get ready, download your Cornell note-taking template from the materials section, and I'll see you very soon. Let's get started. I'm going to play the video once, so if you want to watch it again, the talk is available in the slides. So let me just go back to the slides. Let me just leave the full screen from here. So when you press play, you will be able to watch the talk again. So just pause the session, watch it again if you need to. Okay, so let's have a go. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the talk. Did you do any voice warm-ups? I thought you did. It was really engaging, but let's have a look at how we can take notes with that session, on that session, and what notes did you take? So let's go back to our slides. So again, here is the Cornell note-taking template I asked you to fill. And here is my Cornell example answer. So you can see, although Treasure, so the speaker, talked about the voice and the impact of the speech and verbal communication for about 9 minutes, I guess, I have one page of notes divided into sections according to Cornell. So I've got the dates, and here I've put down different headings that I found really crucial to take away from his talk. I also wasn't sure about certain definitions. So when it comes to dogmatism, for example, I want to check that definition later. I've included different questions here. So the presenter was talking about the pitch of the voice and its relation to authority. I want to check that further. I found it really interesting, for example. I also wasn't sure about the term prosody. So this is something that I wanted to check. And in the right-hand side column, I've got different notes pertaining to the headings. So you can see I've got the notes divided into 3 different sections. And finally, I included a short summary on the top that helped me understand, consolidate my ideas, and also help me to convey the message in my own words. So here it is, the example answer. And you can go back to this talk by clicking, let me just go to the previous slide, by clicking on the talk itself again, if you haven't had enough time to make all the notes you wanted. Other techniques that are really useful are linear notes. And these can be done from the single source or from multiple sources. So you can see 2 different ways of taking linear notes. You can provide, again, the full reference. So this is very, very useful, especially if you're writing an essay that includes different references, a multitude of references that you want to remember about. You want to provide some background information about the source as well. That will help you identify the author and also their credentials, followed by the summary of the main information, maybe some quotations, and also the thoughts about the source and how it will be useful for your assignment. Similarly, you are making notes from multiple sources, but here on the right-hand side, you can see that you provide information for each reference. So this is something that you really, really need to remember, because very often students forget about, and it happens to me as well, forget about including references, and they have to go back to different sources. It's really time consuming, and you don't really want to do that. So by the same token as in the single source notes, you will be summarizing the information and also providing some direct quotes that are meaningful and unique for that particular source. Remember about dividing the notes. If you're doing the multiple source notes, dividing them into different sections. And the last method I wanted to discuss today is mind mapping. And everybody knows mind mapping, but there is again a method to it. So there is a system where you actually start from the heading, the most important information, which is also sometimes called an umbrella information. And then you think about branching it out. So it might be divided into different sections. Again, that requires a little bit of preparation from you. This method is useful for identifying connections between different sources. So I mentioned that before. Very often in academia, you will be in a situation when you have to compare and contrast and source ideas from different sources. When you plan assignments, this method is also very useful because it's quite visual, don't you think? It's very, very straightforward when it comes to looking at different aspects of your assignment. When you want to include that with your planning as a visual, this method is really, really useful. And this can be done after taking notes during a lecture, for example, during reading. Again, that will help you consolidate the information and do it in a more visual way. And for assignments that include a role of reading, I really recommend the cycle of note-taking. You start with skim read, then you move on to brief notes, and then you start with detailed reading. So there are different stages to your reading that form a cycle. So the last stage of the cycle is really detailed notes. Any questions you might have about your reading, your research, any evaluations you want to make about the text, about the source, and you can see that this cycle really helps you systematize and structure your reading. So this is very useful when it comes to reading different sources. And last of all, don't forget that if you want to be a good note taker, you really have to be selective. You really have to ask yourself a question or set of questions. Do you really want this information? Will you use it? Will you need it? When will you use it? How will you use it? Whether it's the introduction, the middle or an end of your assignment. Will you have to repeat the information? Maybe you've noted similar information already. And also, it's worth asking questions about the information that you're noting down. Will you need that information for that particular assignment? Is it relevant? So this is really part of your reflection on good note-taking. So over to you now. If you have time now, think about the importance of active and effective note-taking, so the things we talked about at the very beginning, and also maybe reflect on which style that we discussed in today's session is most suitable to you and to the different assignments that you're going to complete at Middlesex. I wish you all the best with your note-taking. Again, don't forget that we're here to help. So if you go to our UniHub page, let me just quickly Google that for you. You can find us in the study section of the UniHub, and we're together here with librarians and IT support. If you want to know more about different aspects of academic writing, not only note-taking, have a look at our section on tutorials. This is the provision we offer throughout the summer. So this is worth exploring for now. And again, as part of your preparation for the university, it's worth booking a tutorial now, even if you just want to ask us general questions. So thank you very much for attending this session. I will see you very soon in different sessions from that series. Take care.